Hello and welcome to the Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always here at the Pig and Whistle in Stormwind, I go for a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. So grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. This episode we'll be going over some of the hero talents and we'll be more specifically looking at only a few and then going over the next in the next recent weeks as it leads up to the War Within and what you'll be looking at mostly for your class/spec and my takes on them, stuff like that. As always, we have the weekly news. Let's start off with that. So, Liskanoff, Zakali Elders, and Erisar are your weekly world bosses for the week. All of these are Dream Awaken Dream. I forget what it is, always. But essentially it means that every world boss and raid you can get this current season's item level gear from. So any activities that you do, you are going to get a benefit from them gear-wise. That is if you are not fully geared from these raids. There is no bonus event for this week, which I looked at the calendar and I looked at it a couple times and I was like, that seems a bit weird. But it is true, there is no bonus event for the week. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because it is in the lead up to the War Within. We are technically only 6 days away now as of this episode releasing for those who have early access, which is crazy to think it's less than a week for people are actually leveling in the content of the War Within. So this is why there's no bonus event, but the Mists of Pandaria remix is still going if you wish to do that to level characters or to get some transmogs, mounts, etc. Gravity Lapse is your brawl for the week. This is essentially Eye of the Storm, and every 30 odd seconds you get flung up into the sky and you are kind of redistributing yourself throughout the map. Constantly throughout this battleground, you can essentially traverse the map within seconds when being thrown into the air. Tyrannical, Afflicted, and Bolstering are your weekly affixes, or your mythic affixes for this week. Tyrannical, the bosses and the minions that they spawn have increased health and damage, so bring a talent build that can accommodate for that. Afflicted, this is where there are mobs that spawn and the healer has to simply dispel them or top them to full. It's a very simple affix. And Bolstering, when a mob dies, they simply let out a shout. This shout will increase the damage and health of other nearby mobs. So make sure you kill them all at the same time, or, don't pull 200 mobs at the same time and then fuck up killing them all at the same time is the best way to put it. But let's get into these hero talents. So I'll try and get through as many as I can, obviously. But some are going to have more than others is the best way to say. Well, some actually have fewer, but most have 3 different specs. So, Deathbringer is Blood and Frost Death Knight. Essentially what this is the talent is Reaper's Mark at the top. So, it I can't even say that word. Viciously. Yeah, it is viciously, sorry, I can say that. I thought it was something completely different. Slice into the soul of your enemy, dealing a certain amount of damage and applying Reaper's Mark. Each time you deal shadow or frost damage, add a stack of Reaper's Mark. After 12 seconds or reaching 40 stacks, it simply explodes, dealing a bit of damage. Very simple. It's a 45-second cooldown, and essentially you just want to be using this off cooldown to get more damage out. Now, all of these different talents, I'm not going to go through the passive ones, but the ones at the bottom is what I'm going to be looking at. Now, obviously, there can be talents that are within these hero talents that, reduce the cooldown, increase the damage, many different things. And these choice nodes are going to be very impactful. So I'll go over the choice nodes as well, but the bottom one is what further brings out the ability in the hero talent. So that's what you're going to be looking for. So first choice node that you can come up with, when you suffer damage equal to 25% of your max health, you instantly cast Death Pact at 50% effectiveness. It can only occur every 2 minutes. When Reaper's Mark explodes, the cooldown of this effect are reduced by 5 seconds. Not the greatest, I'm not going to lie. The second choice talent that was on this, each rune spent reduces the magic damage you take by 2%, and each rune generated reduces physical damage you take by 2% for 5 seconds up to 5 times. Now, this is more passive. Death Pact you don't want to be using for PvP just willy-nilly. You want to use it as and when you need to. So you'll probably be taking rune carved plates for PvP purposes, but probably for PvE, maybe Pact of the Deathbringer. Who knows? As for the next choice node, you have Swift's End or Swift End. Reaper's Mark costs is reduced by 1 rune, and the cooldown is reduced by 15 seconds. This seems very good to me. And Painful Death, Reaper's Mark deals 10% increased damage, and Exterminate empowers an additional Marrow Rend, which is a blood decay ability, but now reduces its cost by 1 rune. Additionally, Exterminate now has a 30% chance to apply Reaper's Mark. Now, you'd probably go for Painful Death damage-wise, purely on the basis that it has a 30% chance to apply a mark. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to apply a mark like when you don't have the ability up, if that makes sense. So will it just automatically start applying marks, or does it have to be active? I think it would have to be active, but who knows? If it isn't, then Painful Death is the one that you want to go for. Otherwise, the 30-second cooldown over the 45-second is just going to be a lot more beneficial, in my opinion. The next choice node is Dark Talons. Marrow Rend and Heartstrike have a 25% chance to increase the maximum stacks of your Icy Talon up to 2. While Icy Talons is active, your runic spending abilities also count as Shadow Frost damage, so probably just more damage. It won't be counted as physical damage or anything like that, so you don't have to go through armor, and it doesn't get the damage reduction of armor, which isn't bad. And then Wither Away. Blood Plague deals its damage in half the duration, and the second Scythe of Exterminate applies Blood Plague. Okay, so all of these words are hilarious for Death Knights. It's always, plague, death, all of that stuff. But essentially, you're going to want this for PvP because it is just simply a more bursty, option, because you always want the burst option where you do stuff in half the time. As for the Icy Talons, it can be a more sustained damage, but I don't think you're going to be looking at doing that in PvP or PvE. Maybe PvE, actually. But PvP wise, I think you're going with Wither Away. The last choice node Death's Messenger reduces the cooldowns of Lichborn and Raised Dead. Not too great, to be honest with you. And then Expelling Shield. When the enemy deals direct damage to your anti-magic shell, their cast speed is reduced by 10% for 6 seconds. That one's the PvP one. I don't see the point of Death's Messenger, I'm not going to lie. I would say the Expelling Shield is both PvE and PvP, in my honest opinion. And then finally, the very bottom hero talent. This is the one that usually increases the effect of the very top talent, which is Reaper's Mark. So, for Blood, this whole talent is called Exterminate, by the way. For Blood, after Reaper's Mark explodes, your next Marrow Rend costs no rune and summons 2 scythes to strike your enemies. Very cool. The first scythe strikes your target for a certain amount of attack power as Shadow Frost damage and has a 20% chance to apply Reaper's Mark. The second scythe strikes all enemies around your target for a certain amount of attack power as Shadow Frost damage, and it deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets. So it's a nice AoE, and it's a nice way to... It seems like it will reapply the Reaper's Mark, which is really, really cool. For Frost, after Reaper's Mark explodes, it will do the same. Your Obliterate will cost no runes and summon 2 scythes. And it will do the exact same as the Blood would. So the first one just hits 1 target and has a chance to apply Reaper's Mark. The second one hits all targets within 8 yards. Very simple, but from what I see, that seems like it's going to actually apply the Reaper's Mark onto the target again. So it's a constant thing. You don't have to wait for the cooldown, which is really, really good for DKs that are wanting to take this sort of Deathbringer hero talent option. For the next one, you have Rider of the Apocalypse. Now, in my personal opinion, this one looks the most fun. So, Rider of the Apocalypse is for Frost and Unholy Death Knights. What you do is essentially, the very first talent you get is spending runes as a chance to call forth the aid of a horseman for 10 seconds. Now, people might be thinking, what the hell is a horseman? The horseman for Death Knights is something that goes back all the way to essentially classic World of Warcraft, and with the introduction of Naxxramas. So within Naxxramas, you had a boss that was usually the third to last boss, and this boss was called the Four Horsemen. It had Alexandrus Mograine, it had Lady Blaumeux, it had Zeliek, and it had Thane. I forget his second name. I'm just going to refer to him as Thane, essentially, a little dwarf. These four horsemen were very powerful, and they were raised as undead to serve the Lich King, essentially. Now, throughout Legion, you are tasked with rebuilding the horsemen, okay? And these horsemen now comprise of these four characters. So Mograine, Whitemane, Trollbane, and Nazgrim. Each horseman has a different ability, okay? So if you summon Mograine, he casts Death and Decay at his location that follows his position. Very simple. Whitemane casts Undeath on your target, dealing a certain amount of attack power, as Shadow Frost damage over 24 seconds, and each time it deals damage, it gains a stack, cannot be refreshed. Trollbane casts Chains of Ice on the target, slowing their movement speed by 40%, and increase the damage they take from you by 5%. That's probably one of the better ones. And Nazgrim, while Nazgrim is active, you gain Apocalypse Conquest, increasing your strength by 3%. All of these are very good. Obviously, there's going to be a more optimal rider that you would want, but all of these seem very, very good. I think Mograine's the only one that's a bit disappointing, but if you're PvE based, you would probably want Mograine over all of the others. Now, for the first choice node, you have On a Paler Horse, which is a reference to the talent On a Pale Horse for Death Knights. While outdoors, you are able to mount your Acros Death Charger in combat. That's kind of crazy. While outdoors. Okay, so this can't be used in an arena. So I don't think this can be used in PvE, like dungeons and stuff, because I think they're classed as indoors. So I think this could be very good. You could just run around on your mount the entire time while leveling. That seems kind of crazy. The next one is Death's Charge. Call upon your Death Charger to break free from movement impairing effects. For 10 seconds, while upon your Death Charger, your movement speed is increased by 100%. You cannot be slowed below 100% of normal speed, and you're immune to forced movement effects and knockbacks. Okay, so you have a 10-second Cavalier that can't be knocked back, can't be slowed on it. That's kind of crazy. That is just putting Cavalier, the Paladin one, to shame. It really is. So Death's Charge, in my opinion, if you're doing anything but leveling, you will be using Death's Charge in PvP and PvE because it's just crazy. It is just kind of crazy. For the next choice node, you have Horseman's Aid. While at your aid, the Horseman will occasionally cast AMS, Anti-Magic Shell, on you and themselves at 80% effectiveness. This can only occur every 45 seconds. This is still very, very good. And Pact of the Apocalypse. When you take damage, 5% of the damage is redirected to each active horseman. So, if you have 4 horsemen active, you will be taking 20% less of the damage. So, if I hit someone for 10 damage, let's say, 5% of that will go to, what is it? Actually, let's do 100. 100 will be a lot easier. That way I'm not working in decimals. 100 damage, 5% of that will go towards one of the horsemen, so 5 damage there. So another 5 will go to another horseman, up to 4 horsemen. So instead of taking 100 damage, the Death Knight only takes 80 damage. You know, it's not bad, and it will add up over the course of the game. The next choice node, the last choice node actually, this has one less choice node, or 2 than the previous one. Fury of the Horseman. Every 50 runic power you spend extends the duration of the Horseman's aid in combat by 1 second, up to 5 seconds. Very nice. A Feast of Souls. While you have 2 or more horsemen aiding you, your runic power spending ability deals 20% increased damage. So you can go for the sort of more consistent damage, which is Fury of the Horseman, or a Feast of Souls, which is the more sort of bursty healing, but it's very dependent on if you have all of the horsemen out, or 2 or more, essentially. Now, I would say that you would probably go for Fury of the Horsemen, because the Horsemen are going to be what you're going to be like playing around most of the time. And I think this is just going to be more beneficial to you overall. Now, unless you want to go for a real big burst, because essentially the last talent, which is called Apocalypse Now, just summons all 4 of the Horsemen. So your Army of the Dead and Frostworm's Call call upon all 4 Horsemen to aid you for 20 seconds. So essentially you can get the 20% increased damage with these Horsemen like active, which isn't bad. And then you stack that with other modifiers that can potentially increase your damage further. You know, you could go for a real big burst window with the Feast of Souls sort of choice node. In my opinion, it's probably looking more towards like a Feast of Souls where you would just have the increased damage. But in my opinion, this one is really, really cool. It really does fit the aesthetics of the Horseman and the Apocalypse. And just a Death Knight fantasy in general, to be honest with you. Just charging into battle on your Death Charger with 4 Horsemen behind your back, you know, casting Chains of Ice, slowing everything, putting Death and Decay down everywhere. It's a real sort of fantasy sort of hero talents for the Death Knights, this one in my opinion. The last one for DKs is called Sand Lane. Now the Sand Lane is for Unholy and Blood Death Knights. The first talent, for Blood, your Death Coil and Death Strike have a 10% chance to make your next Heart Strike become a Vampiric Strike. And what Vampiric Strike does is it heals you for 1% of your maximum health and grants you Essence of the Blood Queen. This increases your haste by 1% up to 5% for 20 seconds. For Unholy, your Death Coil, Epidemic and Death Strike have a 10% chance to make your next Scourge Strike become a Vampiric Strike. I'm saying strike way too much. There's way too many strikes in this, like, block of text. But essentially, it heals you for 2% of your maximum health and grants you the Essence of the Blood Queen, increasing your haste up to 5% for 20%, or 20 seconds. This isn't amazing, and this isn't amazing on first glance because you have to get a proc, okay? So the 10% chance and the 20% chance, or the 10% chances that you have to get this Vampiric Strike, okay? The chance of you getting 5% extra, like, haste for a decent duration is not going to be realistic. So already it's not looking amazing, in my honest opinion. The first choice node is Newly Turned. Raise Ally revives players at full health and grants you and your ally an Absorb Shield equal to 20% of your maximum health. Very simple, that's PvE based. Vampiric Speed. Death's Advance and Wraith Walk movement speed are increased by 10%. Activating Death's Advance or Wraith Walk increases the nearby increases 4 nearby allies' movement speed by 20%. Both of these are not great for PvP. Probably your best bet is Vampiric Speed for PvP because it's just an extra bit of movement speed for you and everyone. But this is very PvE orientated, that choice node. The second choice node is Vampiric Aura. Your Leech is increased by 2%. While Lichborn is active, the Leech bonus of the effect is increased by 100% and is affected 4 allies within 12 yards. Okay, so just a passive Leech, not too bad, not too shit. The next one, Bloody Fortitude. Icebound Fortitude reduces all damage taken by an additional 20% based on your missing health. Killing an enemy that yields experience or honor reduces the cooldown of IBF, Icebound Fortitude, by 3 seconds. Okay, you'd probably take this one in PvP, in my honest opinion. You could potentially go for the Lich, or the Vampiric Aura, so the Leech one. But in my honest opinion, you'd probably go for the IBF because it's just a bigger defensive and it's more useful as and when you want it. The final choice node is Pact of the Sand Lane. You store 50% of all shadow damage dealt into your Blood Beast to explode for an additional damage when it expires. Very simple. And Sanguine Scent. Your Death Coil and Death Strike have a 15% chance to trigger Vampiric Strike when dealing damage to enemies below 35%. Not bad, so it's kind of like a miniature execute, but you're going off of percentages and the RNG proc rates, so, you know, take it that what you will. I would say that you'd still be going for Sanguine Scent, where you can get the proc rate as a kind of pseudo execute, but Honestly, Sand Lane isn't looking good for PvP. This is very much PvE orientated if you're looking to be a bit tankier with regards to just being in the content that you're doing. And then finally, the final talent that increases the top talent's effectiveness, essentially, is Gift of the Sand Lane. So for Unholy, your Vampiric Blood or Dark Transformation active, you gain Gift of the Sand Lane. And what this does for you is increase the effectiveness of your Essence of the Blood Queen by 100%. So what this means is you have a 20% chance to get like a proc, I believe, or like the haste buff for it. So you get 2% haste for every time you Vampiric Strike instead. And Vampiric Strike replaces your Scourge Strike for the entire duration. Okay, so you're not going off the RNG aspect of it anymore. You fully have the ability, which is very good. It relieves that sort of RNG element of the hero talents, but in my honest opinion, the haste is not worth over something like Rider of the Apocalypse for PvP, because it is straight up just raw damage, raw CC, raw, like, you're just not going to be slowed while on your Cavalier. It's very, very effective, like the Rider of the Apocalypse in comparison. For Blood, it's very much the same, but it's 150% effectiveness instead of the 100%, and your Vampiric Strike is replacing your Heart Strike for the entire duration of this. The abilities that you need to use is Vampiric Blood or Dark Transformation, but for Blood, that would just be the Vampiric Blood ability. It's not great, in my opinion, the Sand Lane one. I think it's very cool. It will probably have its place in PvE, but very much for PvP, you're looking at either the Deathbringer or Rider of the Apocalypse. Sand Lane is very underwhelming, in my honest opinion. It's a lot of passive things that you're going to be doing, and your like kind of rotation doesn't change much from what it is now, in my honest opinion. So you're looking at Rider of the Apocalypse for most of the content within the War Within for Death Knights. That is my honest opinion, and I think that it's by far the best choice out of all of them, and purely from an RPG and class fantasy purpose, I think that it is going to be the most fun and intriguing choice. We'll do the Demon Hunter quick, because the Demon Hunter only has a couple of hero talents. You have Aldraki Reaver, there we go, got it. And essentially what this is, for Vengeance, consuming 20 souls, or 20 soul fragments, or casting the Hunt, converts your Throw Glaive into Reaper's Glaive, and consuming 6 soul fragments for Havoc, or casting the Hunt, converts your Throw Glaive into Reaper's Glaive. What Reaper Glaive does is that you throw a glaive enhanced with the essence of consumed souls, dealing 300% of your attack power, and ricocheting another 2 times. Begins a well-practiced pattern of glaive work, enhancing your next soul cleave. So essentially, when you throw glaive, it will enhance your next ability. It will do, firstly, 10% more damage, what you next cast, and then the second ability that you cast will deal 20% increased damage. For Havoc, this is the exact same. Essentially, the first ability that you do will do 10% more damage, and then the second ability will do 20% more damage. Very simple. These enhance your Blade Dance and your Chaos Strike for Havoc, and they will enhance your next Soul Cleave for Vengeance. So these are the abilities that will get increased damage. So you can sort of throw glaive, and then you can maybe Chaos Strike into a Blade Dance for Havoc, so you get the maximum amount of damage increase on your Blade Dance, and then, or if you want to do it the other way around, you certainly can. It doesn't really offer a lot from what I'm seeing at the moment. It's just very much a passive damage increase, so we'll see what like the bottom talent has for it, essentially. But the 3 choice nodes that you have, the first one is Evasive Action. Vengeful Retreat can be cast a second time within 3 seconds, and you have Unhindered Assault. Vengeful Retreat resets the cooldown of Fellblade. Very simple. Vengeful Retreat, if you still have the PvP talent, you'll be taking this very easily. To double backflip, to be immune to CC, to be taking reduced damage. Very, very effective and good in PvP. The other one, not great. I suppose if you want to do more damage PvE-wise, you can certainly take the Unhindered Assault. For the next choice node, you have Army Unto Oneself. Fellblade surrounds you with a Blade Ward, reducing damage taken by 10%. So it's a straight up just DPS, or a defensive, sorry. The Incorruptible? Yeah, Incorruptible Spirit. That doesn't sound like a word. Uncorruptible. That seems weird. Unless Incorruptible is actually like a word and I'm just not remembering that it exists. Essentially, each soul fragment you consume shields you for an additional 15% of the amount healed. This one I think you'll be taking for both PvE and PvP, in my honest opinion. I think that it's going to be very passive and you're just going to be constantly getting a decent amount of healing out of this. The next choice node, Keen Engagement. Reaver's Glaive generates 20 Fury, nothing too crazy there. And Preemptive Strike. Throw Glaive deals 200% of your attack power as damage to near... Attack power damage to near its initial target. Oh my god, I can't speak. Why can I not speak? But essentially, this just makes it an AoE. You'd probably want this for PvE. Maybe the Fury Generator for PvP. Because you don't want AoE breaking stuff. But who knows? You could go for the AoE one for like a melee comp, essentially. Now, the bottom talent that will, sort of help the top talent is called Thrill of the Flight. After consuming both enhancements, which is your 10% damage and then 20% damage after your first and second strike, gain Thrill of the Flight, increasing your attack speed by 15% for 20 seconds and your damage and healing by 20% for 10 seconds. So this is just going to be like a constant damage increase, essentially. Very much so, because you can constantly, just get this, essentially. So you're going to have your first attack 10%, second attack 20%, and then just more healing, more damage, more sustain, better attack speed for an extra 10 to 20 seconds, depending on which buff you value more, essentially. It's not a bad burst window, because you have Hunt, and then you have more damage, and then after that more damage, you get consistently more damage for a set amount of time. So for about 20 to 30 seconds, you're going to have a very good burst window that's going to be very tough to deal with. That, along with Metamorphosis, it's going to be very, very annoying to deal with. So it's not a bad choice, in my honest opinion. The second one that you have a choice of is Fellscarred. Now, Fellscarred, you have the top talent called Demon Surge. Metamorphosis now causes Demon Bite to generate 15% additional fury. Demon's Bite is just a simple proc on your weapon. While Demon Form is active, the first cast of each empowered ability includes Demon Surge, causing you to explode with fell energy, dealing a certain amount of attack power as fire damage to nearby enemies. Very simple. Metamorphosis now greatly empowers Soul Cleave and Spirit Bomb for vengeance. And while it is active, the first cast of each empowered ability induces a Demon Surge, causing amount of fire damage as attack power. So not bad, not too bad. It's very AoE based, I think, in my honest opinion. So you might not want to take this if you're PvPing because you don't want to break CC. Maybe only if you're with a Boomkin, it's something like that you can do, because Cyclone is immune to any sort of damage and won't break. But the first choice node that you have is Wave of... God, I hate these words. Debilitation. It just doesn't sound right in my head when I say it. But essentially, Chaos Nova slows enemies by 60% and reduces their attack speed and cast speed by 15% for 5 seconds after the stun fades. Very good. And the second one, Pursuit of Angerness. Your movement speed is increased by 1% per 10 Fury. Okay, that's not bad. That's a good catch-up mechanic if you're in PvP. You'd probably always take Wave of Deliberation, though. Or Debilitation, sorry. You'd always probably take that in both PvE and PvP. The next choice node, you have Set Fire to the Pain. 5% of all non-fire damage taken is instead taken as fire damage over 6 seconds. Okay, not bad. Fire damage taken is reduced by 10% as well. Not too bad, it's a kind of damage reduction. And then you have improved soul rending. Your leech granted by soul rending is increased by 2% and an additional 2% while metamorphosis is active. This one's probably the one that you'll go for, both PvE and PvP, because the leech is just very decent, to be honest. You always have like a bit of leech from talents and stuff as well for demon hunters. The final talent you have is Student of Suffering. Sigil of Flame applies Student of Suffering to you, increasing your mastery by a certain amount and granting 5 fury every 12 seconds for 8 seconds. Now, depending on the mastery gain, this could be very, very good, because mastery is just straight up chaos damage for demon hunters. And then you have Flamebound. Your Immolation Aura has 2 yards increased radius and 25% increased critical strike damage bonus. Very simple. I think you'd be going for Student of Suffering, very much dependent on how much mastery you're getting for this like how much mastery you're getting for this talent, I would say. And then the final talent is Activating Metamorphosis. Greatly empowers Eye-Beam, Immolation Aura, and Sigil of Flame. This is very good. Demon Surge damage is increased by 10% for each time it previously triggered while your demon form is active. Okay, not too bad. And then for Vengeance, it empowers your Devastation, Immolate Aura, and Sigil of Flame. And the same thing, increased by 10% for each time it previously triggered. Very simple. For PvP, I would very much think Aldraki Reaver is the go-to because it's more single target based maybe, and you have more of a constant damage increase, whereas PvE you're very much looking at Fellscarred, in my opinion, that brings a bit of AoE passively into your damage rotation, as well as still some constant like single target damage. But if you're looking for PvP purposes, you're going to be breaking a lot of CC by taking the Fellscarred because it's got passive cleave, which isn't always a great option for those PvPers out there. But that is where I will end it for this episode. I thought that I was going to get through a lot more of these hero talents, but there is a lot of them. Anyway, I'll try and do it as and when I can. Now, obviously, the War Within comes out very soon, and I can have a bit more of an understanding of what people are playing when the War Within comes out. These are just my predictions at the start, but I will still be carrying this on into the War Within and seeing and giving them more updated sort of versions on my thoughts of these talents and stuff as we go through them and people learn them and understand them a bit more. But thank you all very much for listening. Do check out all of the links down below. There is a Etsy shop that is currently running. I sell multiple 3D printed items of WoW items, as well as other bits and bobs. If you're more into D&D stuff, you're more than welcome to check it out. Thank you all very much for listening, and go with Valor, friend. Goodbye all.